Hello and welcome to Newsmakers for this Thursday, September the 5th, 2024. I'm Louie Bucko, and on today's show, I'm very pleased to be joined by longtime Olympic swimming broadcaster and university coach Byron Macdonald. Macdonald has been the head coach of the University of Toronto's swimming program since 1979. He's become one of the most preeminent voices on Canada's swim scene. He is just back from his 10th Olympic Games as a broadcaster in Paris, where he had a front row seat to Canada's amazing performance in the pool. And of course, Summer McIntosh. Byron, thank you so much for making the time. We were just saying 10th Olympic Games broadcaster, 12th Olympic Games. Does it ever not get special? I mean, just explain it give me the gist of it.
Well, I'm in sports. That's my job. That's what I do. And so the fact is, when you want to be at the top, the Olympics is the top for the sport of swimming.
Yeah.
And so to be at the absolute pinnacle of the sport, it just doesn't get old. It's new, and there's always nuances and things that happen, and I'm just pleased to have a front row seat every single time.
So many memorable moments in the pool in Paris for Canada. When you look back at kind of the games, I have to imagine it goes by in a blur. How do you process, especially those busy days at the pool where it feels like you've been there for 14 hours, and I'm sure there are days where you are there for 14. How do you remember the moments in such a whirlwind 2 weeks?
Well, they're very special. Every single one has its little nuance to it, but you're right. I mean, I left the hotel at 7:30 and got to the pool at 8 o'clock. It was nice. It was only one subway stop and then about an 800-meter walk. And then I just stayed there all day. And then we finished at 10:30, did a wrap up at 11, and then got home at 11:30, and then go to bed. Yeah. Right. So in theory, you're right. It could mesh one into the other. But, even myself, after, my 10th Olympic broadcasting, I'm lying in bed going, wow, that was a pretty amazing 200 IM, or wow, that was pretty cool to watch that. So I can remember just about everything that happened at that meet.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Olympic Games. It seems like every Olympic Games now, we have that breakout star in the pool, Penny Alexiak. Feels like we've been talking about Summer McIntosh forever, but this was her breakout games, right? Kylie Moss, we were just talking about. What is it about the Olympics that brings out the best in Canadians in the pool?
Well, I mean, we've had some others that have done great things at Commonwealth Games and things like that. But the thing that happens is that everybody's paying attention to the Olympics. I mean, it's like the Stanley Cup 7th game or something, right? This is their chance to shine. And then it just so happens that some of them really do shine, and we hear about it. And obviously, Penny came from nowhere. The year before that, she wasn't on the short list to probably even make the team, let alone win a gold medal. Summer's a little bit different, Louie, because when she was 11 and 12, we're just watching. I'm watching this girl. She's from Etobicoke, and she was a little girl at the time. She wasn't a young woman even at that point. And she went to the Nationals as a 12-year-old, won a medal. And I mean, that doesn't happen, And so we're sitting. This young lady is going to be an amazing swimmer when she matures and gets a little older. She just pushed the agenda forward a little bit. Mm-hmm. Already made her first Olympics at age 14. So that was amazing, and yet it was really lucky she did that, because unlike Penny, when she won, she'd never been really on any senior teams or anything, and she's only 16. And for Summer, because she went when she was 14, you'd go, oh my God, that's awful early. But she didn't win medals and wasn't really the front of attention of everybody. She did very well, fourth in one event and ninth in another, and helped the relays. But then she had the World Championships the next couple of years to kind of get her feet wet with a little bit of pressure, but not the whole world watching.
Yeah.
And then by the time she actually got to Paris, she'd been on the senior team for 3 years. Even though she's only 17, she'd been on the senior team for 3 years. Was used to a little bit of pressure, but not the amazing pressure. The Olympics is a whole different animal than any World Championships or Commonwealth Games. So.
I was just about to get to that, because what is it about her performance at the Olympics? What was it about that crowd? And again, you've been to quite a few Olympic Games. I was listening to what Devin was saying on the commentary about it just being loud. No matter where you went, it was loud. The track, the pool. What did you see in this games that brought out the best in Summer McIntosh?
It was loud, all right. And you have to remember, these swimmers in Tokyo, there was no crowd.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, that's a unique situation where there is no crowd, and you've got to adjust. And they piped in the fake crowd. So I mean, you had to get ready for that. But the key was that the crowd was loud, but it wasn't overwhelming. It was inspiring. And I think because of that, it got the athletes motivated. And you can be unmotivated very quickly. And what I mean by that is you can psych out. I mean, if you're not used to the pressure, if you're not used to the crowd, if you're not used to anything, you can overthink things.
Yeah.
And you got to, calm it down, have faith in yourself, know what you've done, know the work you've done. Really, really critical to have your coach there. And they brought her coach on the staff. And that can just calm you down and get the butterflies done and ready to go.
Now, there's so many different paths. You mentioned Penny, Alexiak, not even on this scene a year before going into the Olympics. Then you got Summer, who's been around. You've seen her for a while, and then she decides to go to the U.S. for training. How, especially as a coach of an OUA program, a youth sports program, how would you compare, what Summer's getting down in the States and what Canadian athletes can get still here at top of the world, top performance?
Well, the beauty of the sport of swimming is that it's an individual sport, so you can actually motivate an athlete, in their lane, what they need to do, and what their splits are and what their times are and what you're trying to accomplish. As opposed to a team sport, I think it'd be a lot harder if you can't surround them with a lot of great people, and you don't have a lot of maybe great competition that you're playing every single day. Whereas in swimming, it's really easy to do that. So I think you can get a lot of things done here in Canada. Summer's situation was a little bit different and unique, and what I mean by that was we were shut down. I mean, as everybody knows, in this metropolitan area, we were the most shut down city in the whole bloody world, I think, right? So the family moved down because Florida was open. And she didn't go to a university situation. Obviously, she was only, she was young. So she moved down there to get a great training situation. And then by the time we opened back up again, they were kind of settled. And they liked the coach and they liked the situation. And the other thing is, she wanted to be around a bunch of teenagers in a program, and there weren't necessarily those at the National Center here, so she decided to stay down there with some 15-year-olds. So
interesting. Now, when we talk about this, are we in a golden age of swimming right now?
Yeah, I've heard people have asked me that question several times, and I would say we are. We had one in the 70s, absolutely. I mean, most people listening probably don't know about that, but in the 1970s, Canada was at the top of its game, and the reason was we got the Olympic bid. Canada got the Olympic bid, so it was a 1970. I think it was awarded. 1976 were the Montreal Games, and what happened was the government had tremendous foresight, and they put a whole bunch of money into sport, and they made it professionalized. There weren't a lot of professional coaches in swimming. There weren't a lot in a lot of sports. And so what happened is we actually jumped ahead of a lot of the world. All right, the United States had their NCAA system, so they were still the big power in the world. But places like Australia and England, we actually started to pass them because they were still under the old amateur. The coaches weren't paid full time. And so it really jump-started everything. And because of that, we were ahead of the curve, and we won a ton of medals in Montreal 76. We would have won a ton in 1980 if we hadn't boycotted. And then we won a ton of medals in 1984. And you know what? But the world was catching up. Every year they were catching up. So by 88, all of a sudden we weren't winning very many medals. And it was a little bit complex because it was the East Germans using drugs too, right? But so now in 76, my recollection is there were 8 or 9 countries that shared all the medals. Yeah. And by the 1990s, there were 22 countries sharing all the medals. So there's a lot more coaches, a lot more athletes. It's a lot harder to win medals. So then fast forward to today, and now all of a sudden, we're not winning a ton of medals. We're still winning a lot, more than we have up until the last 7 or 8 games. But the key is we're winning more than almost everybody else. And we're picking up a couple gold medals, which is always nice.
So if we find ourselves now in this golden age of swimming, if we want to continue to support this golden age of swimming and get even more successful in the pool, what would you like to see commitment-wise? How do we get there? What would it look like?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't think I've been asked that one. I think the biggest challenge I think we have is facilities, and you don't have to have the glorious, like the pool built in Toronto for the Pan Am Games. I mean, that's a wonderful facility, a couple 50-meter pools, a diving tank, all that. But you don't necessarily need to have that gold standard of a facility. If you just have some 50-meter pools to train in, or even brand new 25-meter pools that you can get access to. The problem is sometimes swim teams have a hard time getting into those facilities, and you need those facilities at a reasonable cost so that the athletes can join the team and cover the bills and everything. And I think the coaches will get better and better. All right, we have some good coaches. We need more coaches. An athlete's never going to succeed without a good coach. And I'm not saying that because I'm a coach. I've seen it many times. All these talented athletes, but they are in the wrong place, and the wrong coach, and the wrong program, and they don't reach the level that they can reach. And so it's very important, to have great coaches. And we've got some really good coaches, but we need some more. And if we have more facilities than that, I think it would help.
I know here in Hamilton, as part of a potential abandoned 2030 Commonwealth Games bid.
Oh, that was a crime.
Do you want to talk about that?
I really want to talk about that. Okay, all right.
Because there was a big push for a brand new pool at McMaster.
Absolutely.
And what it would mean to youth sports, OUA, just in general for this area. And that's saying something as a competing coach. No?
I was pushing for it all the way, right? I wanted that facility here at Hamilton at McMaster's, what it sounded like it was going to be, but we just need another one for this neck of the woods, all right? The greater Hamilton area now. We've got some pools now in Toronto, which is great. There's some in London. I mean, London has more pools than Hamilton, okay? And it's not as big, right? In fact, London got three pools. But, it would have been fantastic. And not only does it do that, what happens is then you get the whole community behind it, and now you're going to have more people interested in the sport of swimming. And you got a place to run competitions and meets, and it just exposes everybody to more. And it would have been absolutely fantastic, and we lost the bid. It hurts Ontario, to be honest, right?
Yeah, we just had Louis Fraporti yesterday, or Lou Fraporti was part of that bid, the 2030 Commonwealth Games. And again, I've mentioned it a couple times in 2 days now, so I appreciate your insights into that. Now, we talked about some of the big names, but how deep is Canada's? Back to today's Canada team, your team. How deep is swimming right now? How deep is Team Canada?
It's deep enough, but it's not super deep. And what I mean by that is if, for whatever reason, Summer had mononucleosis and couldn't swim, all of a sudden we'd be kind of exposed, all right, as a strong swimming country, because she is carrying a big load right now on her shoulders. It's nice that we had, a couple boys step up and do a great job. And Kylie Moss, of course, getting the podium again for her third Olympics in a row. So, there are those support people, or not support, there are those other stars, but it'd be nice if we could even develop a few more, all right? And then, there's lots of people working hard at it. It's not easy to do. You've got to find that that nugget or whatever, that young athlete, and there's a few of those around, but you got to then have the right coach in the right situation and move their careers forward.
So to that point, we've heard a lot about national athletics programs across the country, especially in the last few years. A lot of the headlines are not great. Safe sport is obviously for a very important reason front and center, as it should be, but Swimming Canada, what is that relationship like with local clubs, with OUA, with U Sports? Is there enough support, financially or otherwise, for Swimming Canada to be everywhere and to find this talent that you're talking about?
Swimming's a little bit unique in the sense that, there are a lot of professional coaches and a lot of professional clubs. So it isn't, you don't have to rely 100% on national centers or national whatever, right? You've got a lot of development going along in the provinces. And it's up to the provinces to try to foster that growth of 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, the youngsters, and get them to the point where then maybe some of the programming from Swim Canada is involved. And I think the programming that's around is pretty good. There's a couple unique things that probably could be fine-tuned a little bit better. The only thing I quibble with a little bit is that there's not really much funding for senior swimming in the country. I mean, if you're Kylie Moss, you get funded. There's no question. There's very good funding once you're top 20 in the world. But below that, there isn't as much. And so because of that, we're losing a bit of the senior critical mass. And so for a lot of the athletes have actually left the country, which didn't used to happen. And I think they're leaving because there's not a lot of people around them. And there's not a lot of friends, basically, in the sport. And I think that's the one area that Swim Canada could address. I'm sure they have other priorities that they want to address, but I think it's an area that would really help because I think there needs to be a little bit more for senior swimming. Not everybody's going to the Olympic Games, and yet you need a critical mass of senior swimmers. I mean, that is my bias because, of course, I coach senior swimmers at the University of Toronto, and we make do, and I try to motivate them and everything, but it's a little bit tougher without a few carrots to throw their way.
Such a huge country to be able to bring all these different clubs, all these different these pros to be able to support. Now, you mentioned the boycott in 1980. You mentioned 84. Alex Bowman, Victor Davis, and Ottenbright. I mean, are we going to see a class like that?
Yeah, that was a pretty amazing class.
Like that, let's talk 84. Let's go down memory lane. Once again, I mean, we're trying to get there. I feel like I've asked the right questions on how to get there.
Yep.
But are we ever going to see anything like that 84 run again?
Wow, that was very. For those of you that are not familiar, I mean, Alex Bauman is one of the great athletes of all time, several gold medals, et cetera, and kind of robbed out of the 1980 because he couldn't get to go to the boycotted Olympics. And Victor Davis from Guelph/Waterloo, picking up a couple of medals, breaking the world record while he was there, and then Ann Ottenbright out of Whitby, winning a gold, silver, and a bronze medal. I mean, that was very impressive and very historic. There's no question about it. But as we look forward to Los Angeles in 4 years, Summer obviously is just beginning to scratch the surface of her talent and ability. She could do something like Michael Phelps, and I don't mean 8 medals because 3 of Michael's medals were relays, and our relays aren't that strong. I don't know if we'll be able to get back to the podium. That's obviously the goal. But she could win 5 individual medals. You know, she could add another event because she could have won. There were 3 more events that she could have won medals in, but it's a packed schedule.
Yeah.
And the 2 boys that won medals, they're both young. They're 19 and 22, and 21 when Josh won a medal. He just had a birthday last week. So I mean that's a core of 3 very, very good athletes, and they will pull the rest of the country forward. What ends up happening is, you know, if you're a backstroker and you're trying to race Kylie, well, you used to think a minute was really good. Well, Kylie's going 57. Well, now you don't think a minute's very good. So just subconsciously, the entire country shifts their level of what's acceptable and good. And so you push harder, and the coaches push harder, and the athletes push harder, just because you've got somebody that's broken through. Yeah. And so I think that's happening, and it'll happen in the men's events now that we've got some men that are, we were a little bit shy on men performing at the world level. Well, now with Josh and Ilya, you've got that, breakthrough. Well, if they can do it, maybe we should now set our goals a little bit higher in our sights.
When we talk innovation in sport, we talk, millimeters and swimming. Not much has changed. It's been the swim cap and the suits. I mean, what kind of sport? Like, there's obviously a ton of sports science, air intake, breaths per minute. Yep. Like, this is. I'm not ignorant to sit here and say that sports science isn't a huge part of swimming, but equipment-wise, innovation, not much has changed since you were in the pool, Byron.
Yeah, not very much. I mean, the suits, yes, that was huge. Okay, they changed a little bit in '76 with more form fitting and all that with Lycra, but then the big change came around 2008-09 when they came out with actually what turned out to be illegal suits initially. They were perfectly legal and everything. Speedo came out with a new suit, and then all of a sudden some other companies decided, well, if they can do a little bit of that, we're going to take it to the extreme and use rubber suits. And all of a sudden, they broke 60 world records in 1 year. And I mean, it was ridiculous. So actually, the coaches band together and said, we want to ban these suits, and they got them banned.
Wow.
And so now the suits are a little bit better or different or whatever you want to call it, but they're not helping you swim that fast. You got to now provide all the propulsion yourself. So the suits, yes, and there aren't too many other things that have changed. I mean, little things have changed, like the starting blocks now have a wedge, and the best way to describe it is, when track and field, those guys dig in and they put their feet up against the wedge, I guess, if you want to call it that. Well, now we have one of those in the starting block, so you don't slip on the blocks anymore, and you get a little more jump. And they have changed little bits of rules, like it sounds very picayune, but in the backstroke you used to have to touch on your back, which meant you slowed down, you had to touch the wall. Now you can do like the freestyle where you can turn over and do a flip turn. That saves half a second on every turn, So there are little things that are getting faster, but the big changes are really in the training. The coaches know a few more things about how to maximize the performance at the end of the year.
I mean, you see some of those videos with the pool where it's the waves are coming and you hold on and then you let go and you have to swim. What's that pool called? Like it's like a wave pool, but you
a wave pool.
It's called a wave pool. Is it?
Yeah, I think it's called a wave pool. Yes. I haven't seen too many of those.
I was about to say you don't have one at U of T.
Well, and part of the reason is I would probably be a little bit against it, to be honest. All right, because. Technique is so important once you get to the Olympic level anyway. Let me rephrase that. Technique is very important growing up because once you set your pattern, it's tough to change it when you get older. Yeah. But then when you are older and you have that good technique, it works on a really calm surface. And there's a famous exercise physiologist that said, it's the search for calm water, Byron. And I said, what do you mean? What are you talking about, right? And he said, well, number one, you don't want a lot of turbulence when you're pulling for propulsion. But more importantly, and there's a guy from Netherlands that probably epitomizes this. He trains all by himself in his own lane at his national center. And he says, I got my perfect stroke and I know what I'm doing and all that. He says, then when I get to the Olympics, there's 30 people in my lane. He said, I'm not used to that. So for the finals, he doesn't warm up. All right? He's the only athlete in the world that I've ever heard of this. Arnold Kaminga is his name, and he won a couple silver medals at the Olympics in Tokyo. And he says, it'll screw up my stroke. And so what I'm saying is the big waves and everything, I wouldn't want kids going through those because it would probably goof up their stroke.
Yeah. All
right? I try at the University of Toronto to get calmer water. Like I don't want 6 or 7 people in a lane. I want them to be able to have a good stroke and good technique. And that way, because that's a technique they're going to use in a race, when you're in your own lane in a race. So
we've mentioned LA. It's tough question to ask. 2028. Are there any names right now? CBC does a great job on weekends of broadcasting world championships for a variety of sports. Are there any names that on a Saturday morning you can flip on CBC Sports or wherever they're broadcasting and think, all right, this is one to watch?
This is one to watch. Yeah, I have been asked that question. My easy comeback is that we didn't even know about Penny Oleksiak until about 7 months before the Olympics. So, 4 years before that Olympic Games, nobody had even heard of her, okay? So, Summer we knew because she was great at age 12. So, but we've called Summer a generational talent. Those are rare. You don't see those maybe for another 20 or 30 or 40 years. There's a couple young athletes that I've been looking at that I think are progressing very, very nicely. One of them just down the QEW here in St. Catharines, all right? And she's a very good backstroker. Madison Krieger is her name. And she looks great in the water. She looks like she's got good technique. She's young, 15, just turning 16. And you know what? I think she's got a real future, but there's a lot of bridges to cross before then.
Absolutely.
All right, and there's a young man out in Grand Prairie, Alberta, which I had to look it up. It's north of Edmonton. Right, okay. And now the advantage there is, I guess you could call it an advantage, is his father's his coach, and his father really is a good coach. And I think so. He's progressed a lot in the last 12 months. He's only 16, and I think there's a real bright future for him as well. And I think we're going to find somebody couple years from now that we had no clue was around, and they're going to be make the Olympic team and maybe challenge.
We mentioned this. You've 46 years as the University of Toronto coach. Any plans for you to say goodbye to the pool, to put away your whistle?
No, I mean, I love it so much. I mean, as the line I always use is that my favorite day of the week is Monday because I get to go back and coach. I get to work, and I love it a lot. I'm not going to, eventually, yes, I'm going to, I don't really want to drop dead on the pool deck. But I'm going to go till 28, I think in terms of quadrennials, and I'm going to go till 28 for sure, and then we'll see if there's a few years left in the tank or not. I'll go to 28 in commentating. I've already told CBC that if they want me to do it, I will do it. The university does say they want me to continue, so I will continue, and I love it. It's just coaching the group that I have, the 18 to 23-year-olds, all right? It keeps you young. You're around young people. They're thinking young. They do stupid things sometimes, but I mean, they're great, great young individuals. And I still get excited at the end of the year when somebody does their best time. I mean, it excites me because I know they're so happy with what they've done. So.
Well put. U of T is very lucky to have you, Byron. Thanks for doing this.
I love it. Thanks very much for coming here. I love talking swimming.
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell. My thanks to Byron Macdonald for joining me today. What a great conversation. And a reminder, Paralympics are ongoing. You got a few more days to tune into that. But thanks so much for tuning in to us today here on Newsmakers. And while you're here, make sure you like and subscribe to CHCH Podcast so you never miss an episode of this show or any of the other great shows we have for you. One more time, thank you for tuning in. However you found us, thanks to Mike Corsten as well. From all of us here at CHCH, I'm Louie Bucko. Have a great day.